I'm pleased to welcome back my next guest, and it's perfect timing, Larry. You know, people were very pleased to see you back after a long while. How are you?
Hanging in there, okay, like the rest of us.
Absolutely. And, you know, Larry, everybody is really, I think, confused, not understanding what's going on with all of these judges. You have been doing this literally for decades. When you founded Judicial Watch initially, that was the planned purpose, oversight over the federal judiciary. Now you're running Freedom Watch. People can visit freedomwatchusa.org and support what you're doing there by making a financial contribution. Larry, can you help us understand what's going on with all of these rogue judges who seem to be trying to control every single thing that Trump does?
I know I've said it many times, but I'm going to back up, is that at the time that we formed our nation, our Constitution, Thomas Jefferson, who was in Paris, sent a letter back to the founding fathers and said, do not have federal judges. Keep with state judges. He was against Article III judges. He said they would become despots and tyrants, no more honest than any other man, unaccountable, believing that they were there for life. And that's what's happened. It's gotten worse over the decades. Federal judges, I started Judicial Watch back in 1994 after I encountered a judge in Los Angeles who was racist against everybody, crazy, drunk, everything else. William D. Keller was his name. And interestingly enough, he was appointed by Ronald Reagan, and I love Ronald Reagan. But they slipped through. Judges are appointed basically with campaign contributions and other forms of grease. Lobbyists put their name up. In the conservative side, you'll see the Federalist Society do that, or American Conservative Union. On the left, you'll see Soros funded groups do that. Labor unions, corporations, others want their person on the bench. So we have politicians in robes. And that's why I started Judicial Watch. And now I do Freedom Watch, which does what Judicial Watch used to do. I founded that in 2004 after I ran for the U.S. Senate in Florida. But here's the bottom line, Jason, is that these judges, unaccountable, are not being properly policed by, at this point, the Republican Party, the rhinos in the Republican Party, and those who are simply afraid of them. And let me give you an example of that. Jim Jordan, head of the Judiciary Committee, who's held hearings today, pontificating as usual with no coat, rolled up sleeves, Ohio State former wrestling coach, talks about we don't want some judge in Timbuktu, California, dictating policy or dictating decisions. Well, the fact is, this guy's done nothing for 8 years. He's head of the Judiciary Committee. Now, granted, he's not a lawyer, but that doesn't matter. He has done nothing. He has not called one judge up to answer questions, much less started impeachment proceedings. Perhaps he's afraid of them. I think they're all afraid of them. Maybe they'll have a case in front of them that concerns themselves or their family someday. So they shy away. Now, here's the thing. The Republicans are about ready to pull another fraud on the American people. I hate to say it, but it's true. They say, oh, we just want legislation. Now we can do legislation. The Speaker of the House, Mike Johnson, says, we don't want to impeach. We're against impeachment. And also Jim Jordan and the others, some of the others. There are some couple Republicans, some good ones, that say, yeah, we want to start impeaching these judges, as I would like to see happen, as Elon Musk would like to see happen, as President Trump wants to see happen. But instead they say, we're just going to legislate and we're going to say there can be no nationwide injunctions. Well, the fact is, even if they eke by the House, that'll never get passed by the Senate because you need 60 votes in the Senate. You have to block a filibuster, and that's not going to happen. The Democrats are not going to let that happen. So for the Republicans to say this is what we're doing is simply a fraud. And it's meant to just to placate people who don't really understand what's going on. And this is the problem. We need to start impeaching judges. Obviously, Judge James Boasberg, who I've been in front of several times, is a complete political hack. But there are many others, particularly on the U.S. District Court for the District of Columbia and throughout the nation. There are some federal judges. They're few and far between. State judges are much better, generally speaking, because they're generally elected and can be removed. They're accountable to the people. Not all state judges are great either. I mean, are influenced by campaign contributions too from big law firms, labor unions, and the like. But in the federal bench, they get to do what they want. And if they commit an unethical act, you can only file a complaint with a judicial council in the same courthouse, and it goes into the trash. They don't police themselves because there by the grace of God go thee. And then layer that on top of the fact that the Supreme Court gave itself and lower court judges immunity, absolute immunity. You can, in theory, sue them for injunctive relief to stop them, but that's extremely rare. It has to be a really exceptional circumstance. So they think they're above the law. There's nothing in the Constitution that gives federal judges immunity. There's no legislation that gives federal judges immunity. So they run wild. And they are the biggest threat to our country, bigger threat than foreign adversaries and even domestic terrorists, because they have such power over our lives. They can make or break any individual almost at will. And yes, their injunctions right now are enforceable nationwide. So at Freedom Watch, we're doing a couple things right now, and we need your support at freedomwatchusa.org. Number one, we want to form a department, and we are doing it right now, Department of Judicial and Legal Accountability, DOLA, to complement Elon Musk's Doge. We need to get prominent people. I've had prominent people such as Alan Keyes, former U.S. ambassador, that are joining, and we need to make recommendations to reform the legal system. Quite apart from recommendations and implementing the recommendations is the fact that we have to push to get impeachments. Even if you don't succeed in the Senate with an impeachment, you're making a point. Let's hold these judges out to dry. Let's hold them accountable. Weeks ago, when Elon Musk first got aware of what was going on with regard to some of the things he was doing and President Trump was doing, he said, well, let's get rid of 1% of every judges every year. I actually replied to him on X, and I said, no, you need to impeach. And he picked up on that. You do need to impeach. But beyond that, we, the people, have the ability, as you know, because you've actually, broadcast some of these things, we have the power to mete out justice ourselves, peacefully and legally. And we can convene citizens' grand juries, citizens' trials. We can try these judges if it's not going to happen. Pam Bondi should be recommending prosecution of these judges. I hope that I can convince her to do that. But she's got her hands full. 95% of the Justice Department is against her. Most of them are leftist Democrats. I know, I'm an alumnus of the Justice Department. I've got cases today against Biden in Florida where the Trump Justice Department is defending him. That's the way the law currently reads under the Westfall Act. So there's something seriously wrong with the way our legal system is structured, that you cannot hold both judges and government officials accountable easily. And then there's lack of standing. American citizens just can't bring a case because we're a citizen. You have to have a case or controversy. So we need to relax the standards to bring cases in front of honest courts and honest judges. But our own courts, citizens' grand jury, citizens' courts, can carry it out. We have already indicted, tried, and convicted Joe Biden for bribery from communist China, Ukraine, and Russia, for negligent homicide in Afghanistan. He got 20 years each for that, along with Hunter and his brother James. We tried Fauci. Fauci is responsible for over 30 million deaths worldwide with COVID-19, whether it was negligent or otherwise, and I don't think it was negligent. He got life imprisonment. We tried him. We also have a right of citizen's arrest, but we're not going to be physical. But law enforcement have the right to carry out these convictions. And we're looking for law enforcement that do have that strength of character and are willing to do what their jobs require them to do, to arrest people who have committed crimes. Violating one's oath of office should be a crime. And that's what these judges do. You know, the oath of office for judges says that you're not to rule on the basis of person, that by implication, politics or anything else. You're supposed to follow the law. Well, how is it that you can gauge with almost exact certainty how a judge is going to rule based upon which president appointed him to the bench? That's not a legal system. That's worse than a bad joke. Or how can you gauge what the Supreme Court is going to do 90% of the time based on who put them on the bench? And then you have Chief Justice John Roberts, who is a closet leftist, but also just part of this whole rhino establishment that covers up for the fellow judges. So when people suggest that Judge Boasberg should be impeached, and for instance, even Pam Bondi, the Attorney General, says he should be removed, then you get the Chief Justice to make a public statement, oh no, it's just the right of appeal. That's all you have. Well, you know what? That takes years, and these judges protect each other. And I can assure you that Judge Boasberg is going to be treated quite kindly. He already has been with regard to the issue of sending terrorists, Tren de Aragua, to El Salvador. The appellate court affirmed that 2-1. And one of those judges was a George W. Bush appointee. And I might add, George W. Bush appointees are almost as bad as Clinton, Obama, and Biden. And you might remember that George W. Bush voted for Kamala Harris, so that tells you a lot. So that's where we are, Jason. We need to take action ourselves peacefully and legally. We have the right to do it. Justice Scalia in 1992, as I've said also many times, in the case United States versus Williams, found that the grand jury belongs to the American people, not the three branches of government. We all have to be modern-day Wyatt Earps, not physical, not violent, but peaceful and legal. But we need to enforce our own rule of law, because these congressmen on Capitol Hill, they're like the Keystone Cops. And the biggest example of that is Jim Jordan. I mean, how many times have you seen this guy on Fox News? No jacket, wants to show, well, I'm really in the trenches there, you know, pontificating, raising money. I'm sure that most of you get emails from him. I do as well. Give me money, give me money, give me money. Give money to Freedom Watch. We're actually doing something for you. Don't give it to politicians. It's a waste of money. You're throwing it away. And ask yourself this question. When the Republicans had all three branches of Congress, did they reform Obamacare in any major way? No. Did they balance the budget? No. Did they give us clarion calls on what was going to happen in Afghanistan? They knew. They were sitting on intelligence committees, or for that matter, Ukraine. No. They just prance around with their congressional pins, pontificating, this is what we're going to do. And the latest one is a fraud. They will not get any legislation through Congress, and they think that's going to take the monkey off their back. Well, we can't take the monkey off of their back either. And to the extent that they pay lip service to President Trump, who's not really a Republican at all, he just ran because that's the only way you can get elected currently in our broken political system, in our corrupt legal system. The fact is that they wouldn't even obey him if he didn't have the power of having them defeated in midterms or in terms of, you know, primary elections. That's the only reason that most of them support him. There's some good ones up there, like Nancy Mace and Marjorie Taylor Greene and a few others. Ironically, the women, you know, have more strength than the men. But the fact is that there will be no relief coming out of Congress, and you need to look to Freedom Watch, Larry Klayman. We're fearless. We'll do what needs to be done, and if necessary, we'll bring indictments. We'll bring trials. If you want to sit on our citizens' grand juries, you can go to freedomwatchusa.org. If you're not a convicted felon, even if you are, you may have been convicted wrongfully in this country. That's not beyond a stretch, and say you're going to be fair. So that's where we are, Jason. That's a summary of where we are. This country is in dire trouble when federal judges, corrupt federal judges, can do as they please without any recourse.
Yeah, you know, it's interesting, Larry. I think a lot of people remember when you and I were doing shows years ago, you used to tell us all of this stuff. Now, I've had some personal firsthand experience with this, and I know exactly what you're talking about. Now, just along the lines of removing some of these judges, there was a pretty interesting proposal that came forward today from Andy Biggs, where he's talking about removing Boasberg in accordance with Article 3's good behavior clause, not relying on impeachment. What do you think about this?
I think that in principle, that's a good idea. And he's right about that. Federal judges are technically not there for life. They serve for good behavior. This has been a wives' tale that's been perpetrated over the years. But what will be the mechanism to remove them for bad behavior? You know, in 240 some years, only 8 judges have been impeached for bad behavior, not showing up to work, drunkenness, whatever. Very few for bribery. Last one that was impeached for bribery was Alice E. Hastings, as I've said from Miami, who then claimed that he was being discriminated against because of his race, because he's black, ran for Congress in a black district and became a congressman for the rest of his life until he died in the last few years. But what is the mechanism that they're going to use to remove the judges for bad behavior? The Democrats will likely try to block that. That's going to have to go through the Senate.
Yeah.
And with Jim Jordan sitting there, playing games with the American people, you can't expect him to even initiate that in front of the committee. Jim Jordan, I don't know whether it's true or not, but he got into some trouble at Ohio State. There were sexual abuse scandals there, on the wrestling team. And maybe he's reflexive and doesn't want to stick his neck out. I don't know. The guy, may not be guilty of anything. But the fact is, all the guy does is talk, and he's head of the Judiciary Committee. So the first thing that the Republicans want to do is to remove him before you even get to the judges, because this guy.
Let me keep you on Article 3 for a second, Larry, because this is important. And I, again, like I said, I heard all the things you said years ago, and I've come up with an idea. What would be the mechanism by which we could remove a judge? I wrote this draft proposal for a bill, the Judicial Accountability Act of 2025. And it basically would establish a congressional statutory definition of good behavior. And if a movement before a judge, whether it's civil or criminal action, feels that the judge has violated this good behavior clause, they could submit a special type of motion that would be evaluated by a newly appointed clerk as defined in this proposal, who would sit in Congress just evaluating these motions. And if it met the multi-pronged test described here, it would advance to a special committee where Congress would actually hold a hearing, but instead of the traditional type of CNN soundbite hearing, Larry, this would be a hearing that would take place in the district court judge's own courtroom. The district court judge, who would become the petitioner in this action, would select a sitting member of Congress to represent them as counsel. And then the opposing party in Congress would choose the opposing counsel. And through the regular jury selection process, voir dire and all that, like a normal trial, these two representatives would select a 12-person jury who would preside over the facts and decide if this judge had violated the good behavior clause. And if this 12-person jury of citizens from this district court judge's district determined that the judge violated the good behavior clause, they would immediately lose their powers and standing under Article 3. This is fantastic, Larry, because it returns a check and balance to the people such that these tyrannical judges would know when they face you or I or any litigant in court, they should treat us like we are the customers in a restaurant and they are the maitre d'. Because if they violate your rights, if they violate the Constitution or the law, they might face you or I or any citizen on the street in a panel like this that could strip them of these powers. And that would be a check and balance against this incredible power that the Constitution and we the people give them. What do you think of that?
I think that's a very good proposal and start. Yeah, it can be refined, but I have proposals too as well, and that's why, Jason, I'd like you to play a role in our Department of Judicial and Legal Accountability, and we need other scholars as well to come up with that. It needs to be done swiftly. You can't leave the judge on the bench very long. He should have to deactivate very quickly, subject to the trial. He can't sit there while he's being tried, for cases, among other things. And, one of the problems in our legal system, and I think that's a very good proposal, is the way the whole thing is structured with regard to judges. In Europe, for instance, and that's not perfect too, there are many places in Europe where there's corruption almost as great as our own, I might add, is that, because Americans pretend that we're holier than thou, that we're better than the rest of the world, and we're not. Actually, in many ways, we're worse. And, in Italy, you want to bribe somebody, just put money into an envelope and hand it across the table. There's a certain honesty here. In the United States, you call it campaign contributions or something else. But in Europe, there's a dual track in the continental system where if you want to be a judge, you have to go to judge school to learn how to behave, to how to analyze a question. It's parallel to law school. We need that. So I think the judges should have to get an LLM, a master's degree, like tax lawyers do frequently, to be trained on how to be judges. Otherwise, when they get to the bench, it's like Dr. Strangelove. You know, remember Dr. Strangelove with Peter Sellers? He was a national security advisor to Hitler, and then he came over to help the president. Every time he would address the president, his hand would go up like that, and he'd pull it down, you know? So that's number one. Number two, judges should be psychologically tested. Many of them are imbalanced, and they react to the bench. Maybe they had a bad day with their wives or their husbands or girlfriends or boyfriends or whatever the case may be. Many of them are, you know, alcoholics. I've been in front of several that are, and you know, there needs to be some kind of oversight as to their emotional and physical stability. Three, they should get insurance, and they should be for negligent, grossly negligent, reckless, or intentionally wrong decisions, because the average person can't afford to take an appeal. And if you want to go to the Supreme Court, you got to get your briefs bound, which cost you thousands and thousands of dollars. It freezes ordinary people out of the legal system. Four, pay them better. You know, fewer people, fewer judges, pay them better so they're not tempted to take bribes. And you know that bribery is out there. We're all human, okay? The FBI doesn't investigate it. They never investigate it. Alcee Hastings, like I said, is the last one years ago, because they don't want to take on the judges. They depend on the judges for convictions. God knows what they're doing. And last but not least, term limits. 4 or 5 years renewable for good behavior. You see, and that's the flashpoint that we can put into, you know, your proposal is that, you know, they're only good for 4 or 5 years. Then they have to go in front of this committee and a trial to see if they can continue on for another 4 or 5. But if they do something in between, which is particularly outrageous and wrong, like a Judge Boasberg, you got to be able to remove them immediately. So I had that proposal when I ran for the Senate in Florida, and I still have that. And I urge people to go to freedomwatchusa.org, freedomwatchusa.org. Give me your proposals. You can email me at L as in Larry, E as in Elliot, Klayman, Klayman @gmail.com, L.E. Klayman @gmail.com with your ideas, because we are putting together this Department of Judicial and Legal Accountability, DOLA. So we can do the same thing with the legal system that President Trump and Elon Musk are doing with fraud, waste, and abuse. And we need to do it quick, and we need to do it fast. I hope to work with Pam Bondi, who I know, but she can't do everything, and she's got her hands full every other day. It's a new crisis over there. And we, the American people, need to rise up. We can't sit back and just say, okay, President Trump's elected, now we don't have to do anything. That's not the case. Is that we have to join him. We're his citizens' army. Join Freedom Watch's Justice League at freedomwatchusa.org. Contribute to our cause with tax-deductible contributions. We need it badly. The Republicans siphoned off a lot of fundraising. There are other issues, and we financially need the help right now. So freedomwatchusa.org, so we can hire more lawyers, paralegals, bring more cases, etc.
Now, Larry, there's something else that came up that I wanted to bring to your attention. You're aware, of course, of the Signalgate case where Judge Boasberg is, you know, this is where all of the questions are arising from. I don't know if you and I had a chance to go over this or if you've seen this on X. I've got it posted there. But I basically entered a motion seeking leave to file as an amicus curiae and to challenge the standing of this thing, American Oversight, which is an NGO that has sued Pete Hegseth and various members of Donald Trump's cabinet, you know, for this whole Signal text exchange. And the things that I'm saying in here are, first of all, this thing doesn't have standing because as a 501c3 under IRS code, it's not allowed to engage in politically partisan activity. And even though it says it's a nonpartisan legal advocacy group, since it was formed in 2017, the only legal actions it's ever brought have been against Donald Trump cabinet members and Donald Trump supporters. So I am saying in this motion that the thing doesn't have standing under Rule 17 the Federal Rules of Civil Procedure, because the laws under which this thing is created dictate that it has to be politically nonpartisan. Additionally, because it's bringing an action under the Federal Records Act, I'm saying it doesn't have standing to do that because the Federal Records Act is an administrative act. It doesn't have a right to action for private parties to sue like this. So I'm trying to challenge it, but here's what happened, Larry. Boasberg has blocked this. I was told by the clerks at the U.S. District Court for the District of Columbia yesterday that this was delivered to Chambers and the judge is not allowing it to go on the docket. Now, I already have an answer, but I'm curious to know your opinion. Isn't that denying my First Amendment right to petition the courts? Certainly Boasberg has broad latitude to say, I don't like guys named Jason. I don't want any amicus briefs on this case. I don't like what you wrote here. Get it out. But to block it from going on the docket, he doesn't even have jurisdiction over this until it's entered on the docket.
Isn't he the chief judge now?
Yes.
Boasberg.
He's violating my First Amendment rights,
Here's
Larry.
the thing. Yeah, he is. And I'll tell you something. How do 4 cases wind up in front of him? Because he's sending them to himself. Okay, the newest one with regard to, the so-called security leak, of Walsh, Mike Walsh,
right,
etc. Granted, Mike Walsh is not the sharpest knife in the drawer, but he didn't do anything that terrible. It was a mistake, and there was no harm. But the thing is,
he was set up, Larry. There's reason to believe that this is a deliberate action. Norm Eisen set all this up. This is the Get Trump crew trying to get him again. And that's why they're not letting me come in as an amicus, because this brief that I intend to file would explode the whole case.
Yeah. No, I mean, that's the way it is. It's rigged. Look at it. Boasberg is controlling the court that is dealing with a case that involves his behavior, And so this is the way it works. It's fixed. It's fixed up and down. And I'm glad that there's a silver lining here, and it was terrible what President Trump had to go through in terms of the legal warfare. I go through it with the D.C. bar. Many others. Giuliani was just disbarred. You got Senators Ted Cruz, Josh Hawley, former AG Barr. Why they're bothering with him, I don't know, because he became a liberal. Sidney Powell, Jeffrey Clark. You can go on and on. The D.C. bar works lockstep, and they're a quasi-judicial entity, just like these judges, to remove conservatives and Republican activist lawyers from the bench. I've been fighting them for 14 years. It takes a huge toll. It's a reason why we need the financial support, because we want to not just pursue what we're doing here, but to protect conservative lawyers and others who are being subjected to lawfare. And who carries it out? In this case, not federal judges, but the D.C. Court of Appeals, which is all stacked. Do a FEC search, Jason. You'll see there's not one person on the D.C. bar disciplinary apparatus that's given a penny ever to a Republican. It's all Act Blue, and it's all Obama, Clinton, Obama, all the leftists that I have sued in my career and others have sued as well. So the whole system is corrupt, legal system corrupt, top to bottom in the federal level. And it's something that needs to be addressed urgently.
There's something else that you said, Larry, that I want to expand on just a little bit. Yes, of course, they always say, oh, well, you have the right to appeal. But forgetting about all the lawyer fees and all of that, just even filing an appeal costs $605. And for a lot of people, that's a barrier to entry. I mean, it's almost as if Congress charged $150 for tickets to go to one of these hearings. This is the government. This is the court. We pay a ton of taxes. When somebody's trying to destroy your business and destroy your life in the way that social engineers have done, you can't even access justice.
Well, here's the irony is that, they put these little phony provisions in where you can petition to not have to pay the appellate fee or don't have to pay for, Supreme Court briefs or whatever. But the average person can't figure out how that works. It takes too long. By the time they can, their time to appeal has run. And in any event, as a pro se, that means you're representing yourself, which is a Sixth Amendment right. You're likely to screw it up. And then when you're pro se, the judges hate that because then they have to give advice to pro se litigants try to be, quote, fair. And they hate it. So pro se litigants are not treated equally. And you know that. You've been through that. with those that are represented by lawyers who are scratching the backs of these judges, and the judges are scratching their backs.
Larry, are you ready to break some news? No,
yeah,
let me
tell
not
me.
break it. Well, I've just received an order here in the case that I had a hearing in this morning, and as I predicted, the case is dismissed without prejudice, despite the fact that the plaintiff didn't show up to the hearing, has been making duplicative and idiotic filings for 8 years. No further filings are authorized in this case, and any further filings will be stricken. So he's allowing this nonsense on April 1st, on April Fool's Day. This fucking asshole has to ruin my day, and after 8 years come to this ruling to allow this nonsense to continue rather than saying dismissed with prejudice.
You're not saying you're going to get relief. You probably won't.
Well, no, he's locked it up. See what he's saying? He's saying, I can't even file anything. It'll be stricken. I can't object to this. I can't say the guy didn't show up to the hearing and it should be.
Well, that's the way it works. It should have been dismissed with prejudice, obviously, because you've been prejudiced all this time. But you have a right now, and I'm not saying that you're going to get relief. You probably won't, given what I've been saying, to go to the judge in the case to file an objection to the magistrate's report and recommendation.
No, there is no report and recommendation. This is just the order that came down after the hearing today. Okay, so they're playing some kind of game.
Wired with the judge, yeah. No, I mean, that's what you go through, Jason. And, you know, this is the legal system that we have today.
It's a joke. It's a trick. See, what's happening is the plaintiff in this case, I am convinced, and this is my opinion, nothing to do with Larry. Larry hasn't seen this document. Larry's been harassed by these same kind of people, but this is how they do it, you know? When they find someone who is effective at challenging them and bringing these cases in court, they saddle you with this nonsense for the rest of your life. And any judge that was remotely interested in preserving the resources of the court, leaving the court open to deal with serious business and not having to deal with constant filings from morons, would have dismissed this with prejudice to keep this nonsense from clogging up future courts.
Let me give an example of the D.C. bar disciplinary apparatus, run by someone named Hamilton Fox, who is in his 70s, makes a special point, this is very rare, try cases against conservatives. Jeffrey Clark, Giuliani, once Clark disbarred, he was a Trump Justice Department official. They've disbarred Giuliani. You know, and when one of these findings come down from the DC bar disciplinary apparatus through its Court of Appeals, then it becomes reciprocal in any place that you practice law. Other states have to look it up, have to, determine what to do at that point in time. And a lot of them say, well, it's automatic. Some say it's not automatic, like in other states. But nevertheless, you're forced to spend your time and money defending it. And this has drained me in 14 years, financially and otherwise, and keeps me away from focusing, which is why we need the contributions so I can hire more lawyers. I'm still practicing as a lawyer, but the fact is it takes up your time and it just wears you out, and they try to bankrupt you. And that's exactly what the plan of the left is. They're trying to do the same thing with Trump right now. They're trying to wear him out.
Right.
And the fact is the guy's going like an Energizer bunny, but I pray, he's 78. And the energy that he has, I pray for his life in terms of his health. I pray for his life in terms of no more assassination attempts, which there probably will be. They'll probably go after Vance too. The left is vicious, and they control these institutions, and they control the judges, and they control the bar associations. So this is how they fight. And now, of course, they're going into the streets violently. And we have that to deal with as well. So it is a war. One side's going to win, another side hopefully will lose. But right now, even though Trump is in power, 90% of his executive orders have been blocked. And it's going to take time for that to work its way through the courts. And there's no guarantee that even the Supreme Court, with Chief Justice Roberts and Coney Barrett and Kavanaugh, who are, wishy-washy, are going to, hold their ground. And see, they're all part of this establishment. That explains the George W. Bush judges. We want to be part of the establishment. We want to go to the parties in Georgetown. We want to, be the special people, the protected people in Washington, D.C. So, hey, if we take an action against a fellow judge or a bar association, it may come back to bite us too. So everybody just kind of marches on. These politicians raise money. Federal, by the way, judges and Supreme Court judges are allowed to go on junkets. Special interests take them. They go, for instance, go to a seminar in Hawaii, all expense paid by a special interest. Supreme Court says, "Oh, that's okay. That's legal. No problem. We get to line our pockets with vacations."
It's crazy. Larry, you said something very important to me a long time ago, and it's worth repeating. You said that this is the most dangerous thing that the left is doing, and that by eroding the public's confidence in the federal judiciary and causing people to believe that there is no longer a civil remedy to disputes, they're playing with fire, because when people no longer can rely on the courts, the only thing left, and we're not condoning this, of course, but obviously people can fill in the blank. So they really aren't giving up. You know, what you said about Trump, it's interesting, Larry. It's what it is Trump is one man, as are you and as am I. And no matter how tough or no matter how smart we are, we can only each live one lifetime. This thing, it's a crew, it's a team. They keep bringing in new judges and new people retire out, and it's this cycle of corruption that just keeps prolonging this system, isn't it?
It is, and it's got to wear you out. It hasn't worn me out. It hasn't worn Trump out yet, but we're not kids anymore. And I just pray he doesn't wind up with a stroke or a heart attack or whatever. He doesn't eat that well. He eats McDonald's hamburgers. But
he looks like he lost some weight recently.
He did. He looks good. He looks good. He's got a better haircut and everything. But how far can he be pushed at 78? And that's what I pray for. So that's why we, the American people, need to rise up. We can't say, okay, we have, our political messiah. There is no political messiah. There's only one Messiah. And, to Christians, he's already come. To Jews, they're waiting for him. But the fact is that, it's the American people that must back him up. And that's why we're doing what we're doing at Freedom Watch. So I really urge people, I beg people to contribute to our cause at freedomwatchusa.org, because we are up against a huge evil left that wants to destroy us, and they'll use any means they can, whether it's violence in the streets, whether it's judges who are in their hip pocket, whether it's bar associations that are trying to eliminate conservative and Republican activist lawyers so we can defend and bring cases on behalf of what we believe is right for this country. It's a total court press to destroy us. And Trump snuck through. The American people are beginning to understand what goes on. But the fact is that we just can't rock back and say, let Trump do it, let the Republicans do it, because Trump's not going to be around forever. And we now have to make it good right now while we have the wind at our back, and clean out this rat's nest that exists, not just in our nation's capital, but throughout the entire nation. And we are on the brink. The president is right. We're on the brink of a nuclear holocaust here. And he's juggling many different things. He's juggling Ukraine and Russia. He's juggling the Middle East with Iran. We're probably going to have, a major war there shortly. You've got China that's on the move, and North Korea, and God knows what else is likely to occur. So we, the American people, need to rise up. We just can't sit there and forget about, what's the state of the nation and the state of the world. And that's why, I know I'm saying it over and over again, but we really need the financial help right now. So please go to freedomwatchusa.org and contribute with tax-deductible contributions. And also get my book. You can get it there or on Amazon. Takes a Counter-Revolution, Wake Up America. I've been writing about this. I'm the foremost expert, if I do say myself, in judges. That's why I started Judicial Watch. And I hope President Trump will draw me close, because I would like to help him. And I'd like to help Pam Bondi. I'd like to help Elon Musk. We all need to hang together. As Benjamin Franklin said, either we all hang together or separately we will hang.
Yeah, Larry, it's interesting because I'm taking what you're saying to heart. And I think people know I have for quite a while been trying to do whatever it is that I can do. But I have to say, as far as going to court and doing these filings, I feel like I'm playing roulette at the rigged casino. I mean, at a certain point, don't I become an idiot going back in there thinking any different outcome is
That's
going
why
to emerge?
that's why we have to go to citizens justice peacefully and legally. It's time. What did Wyatt Earp do at the OK Corral? What did he do? Okay, I always like the trailer, with Kevin Costner. I put that on some of the podcasts, and and that was Hollywood at that time. I remember that trailer. Maybe you can put it up, Jason. It's Kevin
It's going to
Costner.
get the video dinged, Larry. I don't like putting up that kind of stuff. YouTube, we have so many problems
Let me just
already.
explain it. He's going through the cornfields. His father stops him and says, "Wyatt, where are you going?" He says, "I'm going to war to join my brothers, Morgan and Virgil." He says, "No, you're not going anywhere." He says, "You're too young." It was on the side of the North. He said, "But let me tell you something, Wyatt. You live in a vicious world. And when you encounter vicious people that want to kill you, you shoot first and you shoot to kill." Now, I'm not saying to do that physically. I'm saying, but you have to shoot first, peacefully and legally. You can't wait for them to kill you. And that goes for Second Amendment rights as well, only defensively. Okay. But the fact is, the left wants us gone. They want us removed. They want us dead and buried. And well, we all see that. And you can see it on the college campuses now. I'm of Jewish origin. You're Jewish. I'm proud of being Jewish origin. I'm a Jewish Christian. You're proud of being Jewish. You're walking down the streets of New York. You're at risk, Jason. And the left is behind this. They're behind the anti-Semitism. They're behind the anti-Christianity. They're generally atheists. They are generally people who are socialists and communists. And that's what we're up against right now. And that has creeped into the federal bench and the bar associations in the District of Columbia. There's a guy on the bar in the District of Columbia named Michael Tiger, who was fired by Justice Brennan many years ago as a young law clerk for his subversive ties to Fidel Castro. He writes books about communism, the virtue of communist law. He sat on a hearing committee judging me with another leftist named Anthony Fitch. So this is what you're dealing with here. It's a stacked deck. You're right. It's a stacked deck.
You want to see something crazy, Larry, along the lines of what you're saying?
Yeah.
Can you see this on the screen share? You see that guy?
Yeah.
So we've got a guy here wearing a Palestinian keffiyeh, right? This is from a video that I took 2 blocks from my apartment walking home. This guy was shoving a Palestinian flag in my face, almost poked my eye out. He was being protected by the NYPD. The following day, I got this photo from the New York Post. This guy is apparently a Tren de Aragua gangbanger who had been arrested by NYPD and was being held in Rikers Island. And when I showed the photographs to a police lieutenant and said, "I think this is the same guy," they said, "Oh, you're right. It's remarkably similar." And then they wanted my information. And I said, "Why do you need my information? This is all in the newspaper and stuff. You don't need my information." And then they got all upset and wouldn't do anything. You can't even look at the damn news. There's so many ads all over.
They probably wouldn't do anything anyway. I'll tell you.
But they're taking gang members and putting them into the protest outside my apartment. It's the same guy.
Yeah.
And when I discovered it, the police want to nail me, not get this guy out of circulation. It's crazy, Larry.
Oh, you remember the Ground Zero Mosque in New York City that was funneling money to Hamas and other terrorist countries? I mean, they're good Arabs. The Gulf states and Saudi Arabia are on our side, but there are some people that support terrorism and terrorists. And frankly, Saudi Arabia would like them gone too, whether it's Hamas or the Islamic Jihad or ISIS or whatever. But the police were actually protecting this mosque, okay? And when 9/11 occurred, years later, they found a piece of the planes in their backyard. They kind of made it a shrine, okay? And so, the New York police are not what they're cracked up to be. I'm very pro-police. I have another group called America's Sheriff, americasheriff.org, which I formed with Sheriff Joe Arpaio. My brother was a cop. I'm very pro-police, but many of these police are, they're not able to do their job because the politicians that sit above them don't let them do their job.
Yeah, it's a very strange thing trying to understand how and why the NYPD do their various things. Larry, I know you're extremely busy with all kinds of cases. I'm really glad you and I have reconciled and we're back to doing shows because we can talk about all these important things. We can direct people to visit freedomwatchusa.org and help you by making a contribution and helping you do all the important work that you've been doing over the years. Anything else you want to discuss today, Larry?
I don't think so, Jason. It's my basic message is this, is that we, the American people, need to have President Trump's back. And we need to remember that we're the ones who really control the destiny because we're all, perishable as human beings. We want this country to continue for our children and grandchildren and future generations. And we have to rise up, and we give you a vehicle at Freedom Watch to do that. At freedomwatchusa.org, we need to get bigger, we need to get stronger, and we need to take actions which the government can't take. We bring private lawsuits too. I'm crafting a class action against Tim Walz, for driving the price.
What's this? Bringing the stock down. I like that idea, Larry. Can people get involved in this if you own Tesla stock?
Yeah, and other things. Why are we paying all this money in taxes when it's being sent for condoms for Hamas, okay, or transgenderism in mice, or whatever the case may be? I mean, don't you think we should get our money back? So I'm crafting a lawsuit for that. So these are the kinds of things you can do as a private citizen. And I've always done that. I joined the National Security Agency for mass surveillance twice. And then they got to the Judge Richard Leon, by the way, who's enjoined Trump recently a couple times. I love the fact that he's going against these big corrupt law firms in Washington, D.C. They're bag carriers. They are corrupt top to bottom. I've been against them for my entire life. And he's holding them accountable, and he should. Taking away their security clearances, banning them from doing federal business. He has the power to do that. The hell with them. And they are part of the whole corrupt establishment. So there are many things that are out there, and we can bring private lawsuits, citizens' grand juries. We do more than just get documents. I'm a trial lawyer 48 years. And I know what I'm doing. I can be a consultant to other groups that need some help because there's strength in numbers. So please go to freedomwatchusa.org. Join our Justice League, contribute to our cause. Thank you, Jason.
Thank you, Larry. It's been great seeing you and great having you on. And it's a very troubling time with all this nonsense happening with the judges. Thanks, everyone, for watching. And don't forget, you can sponsor Crowdsource the Truth by going to odyssey.com/@crowdsourcethetruth, crowdsourcethetruth.substack.com, or subscribestar.com, or patreon.com.